bad one, always. And, so making more of our food is going to be healthier. Knowing what's in the food that you are ingesting is always a good thing. And also looking at, if you do have struggle with diabetes, looking at the products that they put out that are diabetic foods that they have in the stores, which are really always grain-based and usually fat-free. And so there's usually some sort of sugar in there. And as you really start looking at it carefully, you realize it's very counter to actually what we should be ingesting at all. Again, it's using the outside of the grocery store. Have you heard about that? That you shop on the outside of the grocery store, the fruits and vegetables,
the animal proteins,
dairy, and I guess that's about it. And that's about it. And you don't go into all the processed food that's sold in the grocery stores.
The food labeling thing is interesting to me. I'm actually doing a webinar about this, I think, in April, because the food industry is very tricky in making sure that you continue to use their products. And so as food labeling became important, and companies had to list how much sugar, for instance, was in a product, they started using different forms of sugar, so that way it would be listed as 3 or 4 different things on the label without realizing it. So it might say sugar, it also might say high fructose corn syrup or all sorts of other things. Milk solids, there's a lot of ways that they do that. Then the whole idea with the number of calories that we were consuming, came to the fore, and so then they started to relabel things. And they really didn't change their product one bit. All they did is lower or make smaller the serving size, so that instead of a cookie or a serving of cookies, which may have been 3 Chips Ahoy, would give you 200 calories. Now you look, it says 1 serving gives you 120 calories, but it's only 2 cookies for the serving instead of 3. The newest thing that the food industry has started to do is actually put ingredients in the foods that change the way your taste buds work. And they don't have to label it right now. And so there's actually chemicals that they can put in a food that will make bitter taste not be bitter on your tongue anymore. It's literally changing the way the taste buds that detect bitter work, and don't have to be labeled. But that way they can keep things in foods that normally you wouldn't taste because, you wouldn't like because of the taste is there. So I find that, really sort of interesting. And I guess it's important to understand all of that. My bent would be that none of us would really have to understand any of that, because we don't eat foods that have labels on them. Bottom line, if you make your food yourself, then you know exactly what the ingredients are in them. GMO, is that a thing out here as well? Genetically modified organisms. And so the agricultural industry is always looking for ways to make their crops less susceptible to getting wiped out or whatever, drought or bugs. And so they've started to genetically modify the actual plants or the seeds so that they're drought resistant or they're resistant to a certain kind of bug or whatever. But the problem is that those actually work physiologically different in your body. In Europe, they call these things frankenfoods. And in Europe, food companies have to label when they're using those GMO foods. It's not the case in the United States. In fact, there was just a big legislative battle in California, a proposition that would have allowed or would have required that labeling. And all of the big food producers, including the ones that are supposedly healthy for us, fought that legislation, saying that it would just make the food costs higher if they had to actually label. It really wouldn't. It would just make people more aware and let them allow to make their own choices. The estimation is that some 80% of the food that you get from the grocery store, one way or another, is GMO, either through the corn or through the soy that is in those products, and no requirement to label those things. The newest thing is actually the first Frankenfish is about to come out. The FDA is taking comment from the public right now about a salmon that has been engineered to grow quicker, faster. And after they take comment, then they'll decide whether that's a good idea or not. And some computer geeks have run models of what will happen. And they ran a model where they took 3 of these salmon and had them put into a population of 10,000 salmon in the wild. And within 40 generations, every one of those original salmon are gone, and they're all the Frankenfish. And we just don't understand the ramifications of messing with nature that way. And I think, you'd think that we would learn our lessons about this, but we just haven't yet. Something that's big over in the Chesapeake where we are is the oyster harvest, and it used to be a whole huge industry for the entire mid-Atlantic region. And a new kind of plant was introduced into the Chesapeake Bay that overgrew everything and has completely wiped out the oyster industry in the Chesapeake Bay now. And so you'd think that we would learn that, with messing with nature is messing up, basically. So, questions, comments? Yeah.
So quinoa gets a lot of press.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just as bad as every other grain, or is there?
No. So you asked about quinoa, and noting that it's been getting a lot of press. The good thing about quinoa is that it is a vegetable source that is a complete protein. A complete protein means that it has every one of the essential amino acids. Essential amino acids means you can't make them. You have to get them from your diet. Any animal protein that you would eat is a complete protein, has all of those amino acids. There's only two non-animal sources that are complete proteins. One is soy and one is quinoa. Quinoa is a semi-grain product that comes from South America. And so it's a good source of protein, and depending on how it's processed, is not as high glycemic as many of the other grains are. So, having quinoa bread or quinoa pasta, that increases the glycemic effect of it. But just having raw quinoa, especially having it with some vegetables, it's a great food. It's a great food, good protein, good energy, healthy energy source. Oh, there you go. Right. Now we just have to invent a quinoa coffee for her, and then she'll be in good shape. Yeah. What other questions?
And again, when someone's drinking a lot of coffee and the sugar and all, you can mediate that a little bit by food combining. And so if she's not drinking it by itself at 3 o'clock in the afternoon as her sole source of food at that time, or if any of us are drinking high sugar coffees and drinks, it can be a little bit better for the system than when it's being drank alone. And so again, adding something that is a slow-moving food in your bloodstream, like a protein or a healthy fat or
something with a fiber in it.
Beans and rice, something like that. That's gonna help. So maybe that's one way to talk to her about it, is at least if you're going to drink the Starbucks, have something with it that's healthy.
So if I was trying to help her change either the caffeine or, because they do the light or the sugar-free, which would be better, to go more decaf or go more sugar-free, or just try to do a full substitute? I mean, they
Yeah, the problem with the sugar-free is that then they're using artificial sweeteners, which are no more healthy for you.
Yeah.
So the way I usually look to approach it is really to understand what's behind the behavior. Lots of times it's energy, lots of times it's stress, lots of times it's related to our teenagers staying up till 2 in the morning playing on Facebook and all those sorts of things. And that's sort of what, feeds into it. So starting to back that down a little bit, starting to make a mandate where, you can only stay up till such and such, and you'll see that start to change. There's also a whole host of herbs and nutrients that can be used that help tonify the adrenals, which can kind of replace the caffeine effect and, in essence, start to make the caffeine not needed anymore.
Yeah. The other thing is we have found that if you eat more protein during the day, you have far less sugar cravings than if you don't. And so I'm wondering if she can increase her protein intake, but get smaller coffees.
Right. That's the other thing, is that I'm not a proponent of someone just quitting that cold turkey, because then they call me back in 2 days with a really bad headache and blame me for that. And so...
and we really do like to think in balance. We can't live in this world, in our culture, being completely clean all the time. We all want to go and get a coffee. We all want, that frozen yogurt or whatever it is that we crave. And that's fine. It's just about finding out how to balance the body, balance the food sources otherwise, so that when we have the treats, our body doesn't overreact to them. you know?
And sometimes that means abstinence at first. I mean, if I have somebody that's got, an insulin resistance issue, we got to get those carbs out of the diet for a period of time. Then you can start to add them back in moderation, and the body handles them much differently than they do when you're in the full-blown thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Something else I was going to say.
Starbucks.
Yeah, for breakfast. So we were talking about proteins. And so really starting the day with proteins. I mean, the optimal breakfast for every one of us would be a 2-egg omelet with some vegetables. That would be the best possible breakfast that you could eat. And if you're not used to doing that, try that for a week. Every day having something, different varieties of vegetables, so it's different, different tastes or whatever. And see what your energy is like during the day and see how your cravings and what your tendencies are for lunch, how they start to change some. Yeah. Also, big proponent of eating more often, smaller, more frequent meals. We really should be eating something every 2.5 to 3 hours during the day, especially diabetics. We should be grazing, not having a big bolus of a meal and then nothing for hours at a time. What that does is it sends the message to the body that there's no food available, and the body's response to starvation is always the same. Slow metabolism and hold on to energy. And that's the opposite of what we want to do.
Yeah. It's often counterintuitive for people who want to lose weight to think about eating more, actually. But that can often be very helpful to actually increase the number of times that you eat during the day. Mm-hmm.
So the last thing I'll tell you is that we have started or are about to start a holistic health class online. It's absolutely free, and it comes in the form of an email once you sign up once a week. It'll come to you every Sunday, and it'll lay out 3 tasks for you to do. One in the world of, or an understanding, in the world of nutrition, one in the world of exercise or movement, and one in the world of, what do we call it,
Self-reflection.
Self-reflection. And so each week you get an understanding, a little teaching about something, and some tasks to do in each one of those areas.
And it's for 12 weeks.
Right.
It's not forever.
And I hope it's forever because all of these are habits. But each following week builds on the foundation that you've set in the weeks before. And before you know it, you're a different person. And that can show up a lot of different ways for different people. But I would encourage you to take advantage of that. It's, like I said, it's absolutely free. It's just about building community and helping people experience things a little bit differently. And so you can go to the website, which is wellbeinggps.com, and right on the front page you'll see a little thing, and you can just sign up. And I think it'll be starting in about 2 weeks. And like I said, every week you get a different little email with a set of things to look at. The first week is about the core. And so from a health perspective, your core of health is actually your stomach and digestion. So there's some tasks in working on your digestion a little bit. From the physical aspect, it's about those core muscles as well. And so it's exercises to really get your core stronger, which affects everything else in your body, right? Yeah. And then the core of the self-reflection part is actually breathing. That is how you interact with the rest of the world without even realizing it. So some tasks and some ideas about how to learn to breathe differently.
And practices. So
that's a good way to
5 or 10 minute practices during the week that you can just incorporate into your week, into your life, to sort of bring a new awareness to your health and your body. Yeah.
So, anyways, cool. Well, we'll be here all week. Don't forget to tip your waiters. And hopefully we'll see you guys again. Thanks.
Thanks.
Cool.